Hello everyone, welcome back to the Azure Bicep training series. Myself Ashish Raj, I am Azure Easy co-founder, which is a technical community based on Telegram. I am working as a cloud and DevOps architect, and I am also a Microsoft certified trainer. So in this training, so far we have been discussing the infrastructure as code. So the first lesson of this series was about what exactly infrastructure as code is, how this fits into the the infrastructure ecosystem, especially cloud infrastructure ecosystem, and why do you need it. And then we looked at what exactly Azure Bicep is and where this particular tool belongs in terms of infrastructure as code tool. We discussed about various features of Azure Bicep in terms of tooling as a infrastructure as code, and then we compared it with one of the popular tool that is Terraform. So we discussed about when do you need Terraform, when you need Azure Bicep, and how should you decide upon which tool is best choice for you. If you have not watched these two sessions, I will highly recommend you to go ahead and watch these sessions. These are very foundational lessons in this series. So yeah, and now the next part we are going to discuss about is tools and setup. So now, since we know that we have something called infrastructure as code, and we want to learn one of the tool which is very specific to Azure, that is Azure Bicep. How do you get started with this particular language? What are the tools that you will need on your computer? How do you get started? How do you create a very simple, very basic Bicep file? We will definitely not get into the details of Azure Bicep in this session in terms of its structure and various features that it offers. But yes, we will be having a quick look on creating a Bicep file, and then in upcoming sessions we will be dissecting that Bicep file and getting into the structure of it, and then what are those features or the things that you have in Azure Bicep as a language, and when do you use those features, and how do you use them. So let's go ahead and talk about tooling. So the first tool that you need on your computer is AGCLI. So AGCLI is a command line interface tool, not only for Azure Bicep. It's very important. If you are interacting with Azure in your day-to-day activity, if you are heavily working on Azure, so probably you already have this tool on your laptop. If you don't, then go ahead and install it. So if you visit this link, I'll just open this link on the other screen, and let me open this. So you just go ahead and open this link, and you go ahead and see what operating system is valid for you. So it is available for most of the popular operating systems in the in the infrastructure space. You can install it on Windows, you can install it on Mac OS, you can install it on flavor of Linux, and even you can install it as a Docker container. And then you have this tool available in Azure Cloud Shell as well. So Azure Cloud Shell is a shell environment that you get in your browser after logging into Azure portal, or you can directly launch this shell as well by accessing shell.azure.com. Anyway, so here the main thing is that based on your requirement, you may install this tool for Windows, for Linux, for Mac OS. So here we are looking at Windows, so we'll go to Windows. But yeah, pretty much similar step you have for other environment based on the package system that you have. So for Mac OS, you have a different way of installing tools. For other Linux flavors, you have different way of installing tool. So Microsoft has given you appropriate ways to do it. For example, for Microsoft Windows, you might be installing it using MSI file or maybe a package manager such as Chocolatey. So once you have this tool, the next thing that you need is when you install this tool, it installs AZ Bicep extension by itself. So whatever the AZ Bicep extension available at that moment, whatever the version is available, it will already get installed on your computer. And the easiest way to see that, if you open Windows terminal or PowerShell window or any other window. Again, we are coming to PowerShell thing in a bit. I already have these tools available, so I'm not going to demonstrate how to install them. Pretty much basic thing if you are already working on one of the operating system that is being supported by these tools. So if you do this, then it detects the Bicep extension available to you and probably will tell you that what version you have and is there any version upgrade available. So if the version upgrade is available, then the next command to upgrade the Bicep version is, this. So right now there is no version upgrade available, so possibly you don't need it, but this is how you can interact with the Azure CLI. We will get into the details of getting quickly started with these tools. But this is one of the first tool that you need on your computer. The next tool that you need is Azure PowerShell. So again, this is a very basic tool that you need on your computer. Even though it's not very specific to Bicep, but it's in general with Azure. So if you are interacting with Azure and if you have a little bit of background of Azure, PowerShell to say, then Azure PowerShell is another tool. Not many people ask which one tool is better or which one tool is they want to use, because whatever is possible through AZ CLI is possibly possible through Azure PowerShell as well. Few exceptions are there in both the tools. So you may come across certain side corners, areas where you will see that to achieve something in Azure PowerShell, you may have to go in a different way, maybe in a more complex approach than using AZ CLI and vice versa. So sometimes it happens that something which is very easy to achieve using Azure PowerShell, but AZ CLI makes it a little bit difficult for you to kind of achieve that, or maybe that is not yet possible, because if you come from a Microsoft Windows background, PowerShell has been for long in Microsoft ecosystem, but AZ CLI is one of the tool that is something came with Azure, not even with Azure Cloud, but came recently. So it has, you might feel some places where Azure PowerShell is making more sense and vice versa. So sometimes you may feel like when you're interacting with more cloud native services like Kubernetes, AZ CLI is more appropriate, more, familiar, and learning curve is quite easy in comparison to Azure PowerShell. So it's completely based on the scenario you are talking about, and it's completely based on your background as well. So if you're coming with the PowerShell background, you may like the Azure PowerShell. But if you're coming with the cloud native background like Kubernetes or Linux ecosystem, it may be possible that you feel more near to AZ CLI. But again, it depends on person to person. Having said that, if you are just getting started with either of the tool, you can pick any one of them. So it's completely up 90%, or I would say 99% of the things that you can do with AZ CLI, it's possible using Azure PowerShell, and the same thing applies to the to opposite as well. So whatever you can do with Azure PowerShell is possible with AZ CLI. So it's not really a limitation for you. You can pick any one of the tool, and then with the progression, you will feel like, whenever you have those corner cases, you may be able to pick the other one to just implement that particular part. Now, so once you have this PowerShell, so again, it has a very good Microsoft documentation. How do you install Azure PowerShell? And there is again based on what where you want to install it. Are you going to install it on Windows? Are you going to install it using in a Docker file? I mean, in a Docker image container. So it completely depends how you want to use it, but you have this installation process that you can go through. Now, another major difference between PowerShell and AZCLI is that when you install AZCLI, you get AZ Bicep extension by default. Yes, you may have to upgrade it, but it is there. The basic version or the most recent version is there. But with Azure PowerShell, you have to install the bicep manually. So you can, if you have this what you call Azure PowerShell, then bicep is another thing that you need to install manually. And then again, Microsoft documentation is available there. How do you install it, and what are the various steps you need to go through. So that is again documented. We will not go through all these things because it is already set up on my computer, but they are very self-explanatory. But what we are trying to discuss here is that these are some of the most common tools that you should have before you start learning Azure Bicep or before you start interacting with Azure. The next thing that I would like to talk about is Visual Studio Code. Now, if you are already doing some kind of coding or some kind of scripting, possibly this tool is already there on your computer, because it's one of the most famous tool these days from Microsoft that most of the people, irrespective of what programming languages they are using on different platforms. So it's again, cross-platform availability is there. So if you, let me just open this particular thing, and if you go to this website code.visualstudio.com, then it detects the operating system you are on. Right now I'm Windows, so it's loading up Windows. So you can select other operating system as well, and then you select the appropriate operating system, and then you can install it on your computer. This tool is specifically for your coding thing, and if you do not do any kind of coding or scripting right now, then this tool is must to have before starting the Bicep journey, and we will see how it makes sense, why exactly you need this tool. So this is the another tool that you need to have. Let me close this Windows. So yeah, and now the next part that you need to have is various Visual Studio Code extension. So this is the beauty of Visual Studio Code. So Visual Studio Code comes with the marketplace, extension marketplace, and if you go there on the extension marketplace, this is one of the first extension that you need to have if you're working with Azure. So this extension enables you to kind of interact with Azure within Visual Studio Code. So once you have Visual Studio Code, you can have this kind of interface, and this extension you can either install it by going through this link in the browser, and we'll see how it happens, or you can easily search that in the extension marketplace as well. So right now, since I have this already installed, it will show it is already there. So as you can see, it is giving me the option disable and uninstall, but you will be getting install option if you are doing it for the first time. So for some of the extension, as you can see, this one I have not installed it, so it is giving me the option to install it. So based on the extension, you can either search it from here, or you can go to this link. These links I will be providing in the description box, and you can directly install this extension. So how do you install that extension? Is from browser, is you just simply click on this install, and then it will open the Visual Studio window. And when you open Visual Studio window, then it will directly go to that extension, just like you did by search box. So it completely depends upon how you want to go ahead and install this extension, and this is pretty much applicable for all other extension that we are going to talk about. So this is the one extension that you need to have, the first extension to interact with Azure. The next extension that you will be requiring is the Bicep extension. This is very much specific to Bicep learning. So this Microsoft has published a dedicated extension for Bicep language, and you can see this icon here is for Bicep. And again, same process, you need to install it, and the moment you install it, it will be there in your Visual Studio environment. And when you go to this Visual Studio environment, and again I can search it here as well. So if I'll search it, it will give me that I have already have it. So once you have this, the extension page also gives you how do you use it, what are the various benefits you get, and what are the things are there you can make use of. So we'll be talking about some of the basic things here for this extension and how this extension helps you for learning Bicep. But before that, let me discuss about other extensions as well, which are very important for Bicep learning, or kind of making it easy for you. So Bicep extension is one of the extension that you need to have. Then the another extension that you need to have, or I would say it is a recommendation. I would not say it is a mandatory thing to have, especially for Bicep, but in general for Azure. So Azure CLI also has an extension for you where you can use this extension and you can interact with Azure CLI within Visual Studio interface. So you don't really have to open a different terminal window and all those things. So you can install this, or you can skip this as well. But the most important one is this Visual Studio Bicep. Similarly, with the CLI, you have this PowerShell extension as well, which is very much similar in functionality. It helps you to interact with PowerShell, gives you some of the IntelliSense, or the helping help, or kind of what you call suggestions for PowerShell script when you do this in Visual Studio Code. So it helps you to kind of make use of this language in little bit more better way. Again, it's a kind of a recommendation. Even if you don't have this, Bicep learning will still be similar. But yes, while interacting with Azure, you might be using one of the tool like CLI or PowerShell. And if you are using CLI, then CLI extension makes sense. If you are using PowerShell, then PowerShell makes more sense. So once you have these extensions, then okay, this is the last slide. So let me just quickly go to the screen and let me remove this. So yeah, so once you have this these things on your computer, then what you can do is you can easily start working with the Bicep. Now the best way to do this is, let me go ahead and create a Bicep file. So to create a Bicep file, what you can do is, I have already created these folders just to understand what exactly we are doing. So this is day 3. Day 1, day 2 were mostly theoretical, so we had no folder here. In day 3, I'm going to create a file here, and I'm going to call it like storage.bicep. So what I'm trying to say is that I'm going to create a storage account using Bicep file. And now if you see, the moment I type Bicep, Visual Studio Code automatically detects this. If you see here, it automatically detects this file format and able to render it. So what does it mean? That Microsoft Windows, the Visual Studio Code understand that what to do with this with this particular file format, and what you might be doing, or what you can do with this Bicep file. And we will see that how does it helps. So the moment I create this storage.bicep, and in Azure, when you create resources. So I'm going to create this resource here, and the moment I type little bit of keyword, I'm starting with the resource, and the moment I type it, Visual Studio says that do you mean by resource? So it's similar to when you start typing in Google, and then Google knows that what you might be trying to kind of search. So similar to this Visual Studio code extension for Bicep is helping you to know. And the moment you get the suggestion that you want, so I will just type on tab key on my keyboard and it will select that option. So resource, and I'm just naming it like, my storage. Right now, if you are just starting up, and if this icon is, there was an error, forget about it. No, it comes sometime, and we will see it's not a big issue here. So if the syntax is not making sense right now, then don't worry about it. We have dedicated sessions on structure, what does it mean, how to use them, when to use them, and all those things. But right now our primary objective here is to how to use these tools to quickly get started, and that's what we are doing. So resource, I'm trying to create a resource which is my storage, and the moment I type here, then it says that okay, you want to create a resource, you name it like my storage. It's a symbolic name, we call it. We will talk about it, what do we mean by symbolic name. And then it goes to the Microsoft Resource Manager API and figure out how many resources are available. So if you are familiar with Azure Resource Manager, everything in Azure is a resource, and each resource has its own resource type. So for example, for a storage account, there is a resource type which is this, and each resource provider has its APIs, and there are many APIs available, and you can see this, there are many APIs versions that I can see. Now if you want to see what this resource provider can do, so you can go into the Microsoft documentation, and let me open that one for you. So let me do this. So the best way to find this thing is do Google. I mean, the easiest way, I would say, or you can have it bookmarked as well, and then you search it. So don't put it in browser address bar, because it will detect it like a domain name. So, and then it will not give you the relevant result. But if you do this, it will directly go to the resource provider documentation, and there you see you have different options: Bicep, ARM template, Terraform. So Terraform, if you are working with Terraform, Microsoft has a very good integration and support with Terraform. If you're working the ARM template, you can have it. Right now we are talking about Bicep, so we are going to Bicep. And then if you see with this particular thing, you have many things that you can define, and we'll be talking about these things progressively. But right now our objective is to have this minimal thing. So what I'm going to do, so we have this thing, and then I'm just typing space, and then it is trying to kind of detect what I need. So right now it says there is an option which says that required properties. So what it means that the bare minimum thing you need for a storage account, and I'm going to select that, and then it says you need a name of storage account, you need location of the storage account, then you need SKU. So if you are familiar with the storage account, then you might know there is something called SKU. So you need a SKU, and then name of the SKU, and you can have the kind of the storage account. So, and when you are trying to do this for name, if you know, in storage account, name has to be globally unique. So a storage account name has to be globally unique. Now this basic level of Azure resource knowledge is kind of a prerequisite for this particular training. So if you are not familiar with the basics or fundamental of Azure, we have a dedicated playlist for Azure Fundamental and Azure Administrator course. I will highly recommend you to watch that, or maybe go through the Azure Learn resources and try to figure out what exactly a storage account is, what exactly a virtual machine is, and what other resources, the basic resources in Azure like virtual network and all other things. Here we are talking about these resources and how to create those resources. So here the name, so I will just go ahead and do this in a very simplistic way. So what I am doing, ADP demo 01 SA. So I am just kind of or maybe ADP demo SA01. Hopefully this is one of the unique name, because I don't think someone would have created this storage account so far, or unless I have created it and left it there as part of demo. And the next part is location. So location, I'm typing here resource group dot. Now this thing, if it is not making sense, that's okay. So here we are using one of the inbuilt function, resource group dot location. Again, we are going to talk about details of these things in upcoming lessons. Here we are not going to get into details of these things. Here we are just trying to use whatever help we can get from Bicep extension of Visual Studio, and we are trying to use that and just trying to get around with the bare minimum thing and try to see how to use it. Then the SKU, when I type spacebar, it goes to the resource provider that I'm using here, and then it figures out that these are the SKUs available. So again, if you happen to do this using documentation, and if I go to the documentation here, then you might have to get into the details of, for example here, so SKU, then if I go to SKU, then I will get what are the various SKU name are possible. So you have to get into the documentation. Yes, it is available there, and it may be possible that in some of the cases Azure Bicep extension in Visual Studio might not be that much helpful, and you may have to refer the documentation, and that's why we have talked about how to get there. But before getting there, it might be possible that many times 70 to 80% or 90% of the time you might be able to get all the relevant options here itself without getting into the documentation on the browser. So let me go ahead and take one of the SKU. So I'll go with the bare minimum SKU, that is standard LRS. It creates a locally redundant storage account. What is storage locally redundant? Again, Azure fundamental. Let's skip that part here, but yes, go ahead and watch Azure fundamentals. What are the storage account? What are these SKUs? What do they mean? And when to use which SKU. That is more of a Azure concept. Coming back to the infrastructure as code, that is Bicep. And extension has this capability to help you to tell what are the options available, which one to choose. That's where you need to have a little bit of understanding of Azure. Now, the next part is, again, for kind, I can pick from here. Again, it might be possible that sometime you might not be getting the relevant options here, and that's the time it is you need to go to this particular link and or provider documentation and try to figure out what do you need. Similar way, like it was listed for SKU name, kind would also be listed here itself. So if I go here and if I look at the documentation, then somewhere this kind will be listed and it will tell what are the various kinds available, and then again you can read it and you can figure out what these different properties makes, what these different properties are. Now here I'll be checking and I'll be selecting this kind. So it's one of the very common kind of storage account that we create, that is storage v2, and that's it. So this is the code that should be able to deploy a storage account in Azure. Now, to deploy a Azure Bicep file in Azure, you need to connect with Azure, and to connect with Azure you need to have AG CLI or PowerShell. So we have this AG CLI. So AG login is the command that you can use to log into Azure. So I'm going to use this, and it should launch browser. And let me log in on the other screen because I might have to select one of the account. Okay, and the moment I logged in, it after login it will give me the successful screen, and I can close this window here. And after I closed it, if I go to the Visual Studio, it will soon show up the details of the accounts that I have access to. So yeah, as you can see, there is an account that I am access to, and I will just kind of go ahead and so I am logged into the Azure now. Now, once you are logged into Azure, even in Portal, to create one type of resource, for example, storage account, you need to have a resource group. So first you need to create a resource group. Now, again, right now we are doing step by step, but in production environment, these things will also be automated. And how to do this, we will be talking more into next upcoming chapters, how to set up the the infrastructure login, how to set up CI/CD processes around Azure Bicep files, and how do you do this, all these things in a very orchestrated manner. For the time being, we are going step by step. So we have the Bicep file, we are logged into the Azure. Now we will create a resource group. To create a resource group, all you need to do is az group command, and as you can see, it automatically populates. This is because of history that I had in my Visual Studio during dry run before recording. So I was just testing if everything is working fine on my system, so that we will have less glitches during the recording. So you can see this Azure Visual Studio also does give you that historical thing in place as well. So you just need to configure these things sometime based on the extension, and sometime based on the configuration of Windows Terminal or Visual Studio. But these benefits you can get if you're having these tools. So I have this az group create. Now this is again a az CLI command, and to kind of go through these CLI command, you may have to remember very basic level of CLI commands. Very limited number of CLI command, usually group create, deployment, and all. And slowly, if you are new to AG CLI, you just need to know that there are very few common AZ CLI command that you need to remember, and then later on it comes very obvious that you will be able to figure out what you need and what exactly you have to have in your memory, or maybe what exactly you use on day-to-day basis. It's not something you should be memorizing. I just wanted to make that point. So even I don't memorize. You just need to go to the documentation. Here's the documentation. Figure out what exactly you are trying to do. So for example, we are trying to interact with the resource group, and you go there and go to the group, and then you on the summary page you will have all the details. How do you do that? And you can see az group create is the option that will help you to create a resource group. And if you go there, you will see that you need to provide a location, you need to provide a name, then all these things are optional things that you can have, else this is the bare minimum thing that you need to have. And that's what we are doing in the Visual Studio. So az group create, name is this, location is this, and that's it. So the moment I will create this group, it has been created. And if I go to log into portal, let me go there and log in. And we'll see. And so yeah, this is the account. I have various accounts, and that's why. So one of the account I am picking, and the moment I pick this, it will log me into the portal, hopefully in the right account. Yep. And if I go here in the resource group, I will see that I have created a resource group, Bicep, which has name Bicep, and it was just created now, and there is no deployment, and there is nothing here. So if I go here in the Visual Studio now. So I have the resource group now. Now what I need to do is I need to create a deployment. So I can do this AZ deployment group create. So what I'm trying to say, I want to create a deployment in a group with this name, and this is the location, and hopefully the location is correct. So IAC demo day 3 storage dot bicep, and the moment I will issue this command, it will go ahead and connect to the Azure, will provide this bicep file to the resource manager, Azure Resource Manager ARM, and then it will try to deploy. If there is any error, then it will show the error. Right now it is showing warning. Again, in upcoming lessons, we are as and when we will be progressing, we will go through these warnings. We will try to see how we can avoid these warnings, how to look into the best practices. It's a very basic bicep file. Right now we are not using many of the construct of bicep that is very helpful in creating bicep files. So for example, we are not using parameter, we are not using variables, we are not using many of the things that you easily you can make your bicep file better, because it's a very simple bicep file. In production you will rarely see this much number of line as a production grade infrastructure. You may have a bunch of lines, and then you may have to kind of go through. So to start with, we are just doing this, and then the moment I deployed it, and if I go to the portal and if I refresh this, then you will see this, the demo storage account is available now. So the point here is that as soon as you create this deployment, you have this storage account available here. And let me go to this bicep file, and you have this quick feedback, what exactly resource has been created and what are the various properties of this resource. Right now our objective was just to have the environment or the computer set it up to make sure that we can at least start creating bicep and start deploying it in the Azure environment. The next part, we will start actually exploring what are the various what are the basic structure of bicep file, what are the various construct that you see normally in a bicep file, and why do you need them, how to use them, and what are the best practices around it. So these are the things that we are going to discuss in upcoming sessions. Thank you so much for watching. Feel free to share your feedback, and if you want to connect with me, you can connect with me on the LinkedIn or on so I will just show up my contact details, so you can connect with me on LinkedIn. You can of course share your comment in YouTube on the YouTube channel in the comment section, or you can join our Telegram group and share your feedback, or if you have any question, feel free to ask there. That is it from my side for this topic. Let's meet again on the next topic in this particular training series and talk about other things related to bicep. Thank you. Thanks for watching. Have a good day.